So, good evening, students. So, welcome to another session. So, we have been taking up with a series of lectures on the topic called as principles of inheritance and variation. So, with regards to that, in the previous session, we started off with a topic called as cytoplasmic inheritance. So, before that, we have completely done with a topic called mutations. So, under mutations, we saw different types of mutations and we went into a few detailed things about different classifications of mutations. So we saw something called as the chromosomal mutation, then we saw about something called as the gene mutation also. So once we have done with that, we then moved on with another topic called as the cytoplasmic inheritance, right? So today we'll be taking up, or we'll be rather finishing off with the cytoplasmic inheritance by taking a couple of examples to understand what exactly is this cytoplasmic inheritance all about. So if you could recollect what we saw in the previous session, we started off with this cytoplasmic inheritance and we saw what exactly is this cytoplasmic inheritance all about. So just a quick recap of what we have seen in the previous session, then we'll get on into today's classes, right? So what exactly is this cytoplasmic inheritance all about? So we said that whenever we talk about the topic called as inheritance, we are actually referring to the transfer of genetic material which is actually present in the nucleus, the chromosomes and the genes which are a part of the nucleus, and the transfer of those genes or chromosome from one generation to the other generation, that we have been talking as inheritance. But now the topic what we are going to take up today is with regards to cytoplasmic inheritance, right? As you have already seen in the previous session, I told you that along with the genomic DNA that is present in the nucleus, the cell also has two different types of cell organelles, which we call it as the semi-autonomous cellular organelles. So out of which we have two, one is called the mitochondria as well as the plastids. So mitochondria, we know it is present in both plants as well as animals, whereas plastids is present only in case of plants. Now, if you see these two cellular organelles, that is mitochondria and plastids, both are actually present in the cytoplasm, right? And I told you that they have their own genetic material. So since they have their own genetic material, that is mitochondria and plastid, since they have their own genetic material, they also have certain genes, and those transfer of those genes from one generation to the other generation, we start calling it as cytoplasmic inheritance. We also called it as organelle inheritance because the genetic material present in these organelles are actually transferred from one generation to the other generation. And also we have already seen that during the process of reproduction, sexual reproduction, we know that two gametes come and fuse together. So one gamete comes from the maternal side, one gamete from the paternal side. And I also told you that it is the maternal gamete, right, that is the female gamete, who is contributing both the nucleus as well as cytoplasm to the zygote, whereas the male gamete contributes only the nucleus, right? Since the nucleus is being contributed by the female gamete, right, so whatever genes are present in the mitochondria or plastid of the female gamete is actually inherited into the offspring. So therefore we also started calling it as maternal inheritance. So what does maternal inheritance mean? Inheritance of certain genes from the mother to the offspring. So why only mother is transferring these particular genes, right? Because these genes, which we call it as the organelle genes, are actually present only in the cytoplasm. And during the process of reproduction, that is sexual reproduction, it is the cytoplasm of the mother which comes into the zygote and not of the father. So therefore, we also started calling it as maternal inheritance. So this is what we have seen in the previous session, right? Some sort of introduction with regards to cytoplasmic inheritance. So three names we have given for cytoplasmic inheritance. One is cytoplasmic inheritance. Second one, we also call it as organelle inheritance because the organelles are the ones which are actually inherited. So the genome of the organelles is the one which is inherited. We call it as organelle inheritance. And the third one, we also call it as maternal inheritance because it is the mother who is contributing the cytoplasm to the zygote. So therefore, these genetic material which is present in the cytoplasm, right, cytoplasm of either mitochondria or plastids, are actually transferred into the offspring through the mother. So therefore, we also started calling it as maternal inheritance, right? So in this session, let us take up a couple of examples to understand this process called as cytoplasmic inheritance. So we'll be taking up two examples, one with regards to plants and the other one with regards to animals. So let's begin with the topic called as the cytoplasmic inheritance, which is seen in case of plants first. Cytoplasmic inheritance, or it is also known as maternal inheritance. So the example what we are going to take up first is with regards to plants, right? And that plant is called as Mirabilis jalapa, right? In that we'll be talking about plastid inheritance, right? Plastid inheritance in Mirabilis jalapa. Mirabilis jalapa, we also know that the common name of Mirabilis jalapa is 4 o'clock plant, right? So we are going to see how exactly the plastids are actually inherited from one generation to the other generation in this particular organism called as Mirabilis jalapa, which is a 4 o'clock plant, right? So before we understand what exactly is this plastid inheritance, so let me give you a basis of this, a background of this particular plastid inheritance, right? So whenever we talk about plastid inheritance, in case of this particular plant called as Mirabilis jalapa or the 4 o'clock plant, right? So this plant has three different types of branches. There are three different types of branches present in this particular plant, that is Mirabilis jalapa. So one branch has, it is said to be a green colored branch, right? Second one is a pale green branch, pale green branch. And the third variety, we start calling it as variegated branch. Variegated branch. So there are three different kinds of branches produced in this particular plant called as Mirabilis jalapa. First one, it is called the green plant or the green branch. Second one is pale green branch, and the third one is variegated branch. So what does this variegated branch mean? Variegated branch is nothing but they have, it is actually a green colored branch only, but along with the green part, they have some sort of non-green part also. So there is a green colored part seen in this branch, and at the same time there is a non-green colored also seen in the same branch, right? So that we start calling it as variegated branch, right? Now this green colored branch will start producing green colored leaves, right? Pale green colored branch will again start producing pale green colored leaves. Variegated plants will start producing variegated leaves, right? So when we say variegated leaves, they have green color as well as non-green part also, so that we start calling it as variegated leaves. So we can either take into consideration as branches, or we can also take into consideration as leaves. So they have three different types of branches, or rather three different types of leaves. One type, it is called the green colored branch. Second one is pale green branch, and the third one is variegated branch, right? So three different categories. Now, the reason for this green colored branch or green colored leaves is the presence of one of the plastid, which we know is the chloroplast. Now, since this branch or this particular leaves have chloroplast, and we are all familiar that chloroplast has a pigment called as chlorophyll, and because of this green colored pigment called chlorophyll, the color appears to be green, right? So they have one of the type of plastid which is called as chloroplast, whereas pale green colored branch or leaves, they have another type of plastid which is called as leucoplast. They have another type of plastid which is called as leucoplast. The third one, the variegated type of leaves or variegated type of branches, they have all three types of plastid. So what are the three different types of plastid what we know? So they have chloroplast, they have leucoplast, and they also have chromoplast. They also have chromoplast. So green colored branch is because of the presence of this particular chloroplast pigment, chloroplast, which is one of the plastid. Pale green colored branch or leaves is because of another pale plastid, which is called as leucoplast. Whereas the third category, variegated type of branches or leaves, is because of the presence of all the three different types of plastid. it is the chloroplast, the leucoplast, as well as the chromoplast. So this is what we have. So the color of this branches, right, is because of the plastids which is actually present. Now, where is the plastids located? Where are these chloroplast, leucoplast, and or chromoplast? They are located. They are actually present in the cytoplasm. Now, since they are present in the cytoplasm, so during the process of sexual reproduction, as I've already said, right, it is the female gamete who is contributing the nucleus as well as the cytoplasm, whereas it is the male gamete contributes only the nucleus during the process of fertilization. Right, now let us take up a particular cross here and see how exactly this sort of branch color or leaf color inheritance is actually happening in this plant called as Mirabilis jalapa. Right, so let us take up a green colored plant, right, a green colored plant or green branch plant. So this green branch, let us consider this to be a female. Right, now since this is a female, the egg that is actually produced by this female of the green colored branch will have the nucleus, right? So they have the nucleus. Along with nucleus, they also have cytoplasm. So this is, we are talking about the female gamete here. Right, so the female gamete of the green colored branch or green colored leaves will start forming a gamete, and that gamete, the female gamete, will have the nucleus, and at the same time they have a cytoplasm also. Right, now let us consider a pale green color male, a pale green color male. Right, so the female is green, so therefore we have the female gamete here. Male is pale green, and this pale green male will start producing a gamete with only the nucleus. So once fertilization happens between the two, right? So once fertilization happens between the two, a zygote is being formed. A zygote is being formed. Now, as I told you, during the process of reproduction, during the process of fertilization, the female gamete would contribute the nucleus as well as the cytoplasm, whereas the male gamete will contribute only the nucleus. Now, when we say a green colored female plant, right, having green leaves forms a gamete, so it contributes the nucleus, and at the same time it contributes the cytoplasm also. Now, what is present in the cytoplasm? Which type of plastid is present in the cytoplasm? They have the plastid called as chloroplast in their cytoplasm. Now, since chloroplast is present in the cytoplasm, the offspring here, that is this zygote, will inherit the nucleus of both the male as well as the female. At the same time, this zygote will start inheriting the cytoplasm from the female. So whatever plastid is present in the cytoplasm of the female will be inherited into the zygote. So now this zygote also will have chloroplast in their zygote, in that cytoplasm. So therefore, which color branches or which color leaves does this zygote produce? It starts producing again the green leaves or the green branches. This we start calling it as the cytoplasmic inheritance, right? So whatever type of plastids is present in the female, the same type of plastid will be inherited into the offspring. So this you have to be very clear with, right? So whenever we talk about cytoplasmic inheritance, whatever type of plastid is present in the female gamete, so the same type of plastid will be inherited even into the offspring also. So this sort we start calling it as cytoplasmic inheritance, or as I've already said, we also call it as maternal inheritance, because it is the female gamete who is contributing the plastid into the offspring, right? So this is what we have in simple about plastid inheritance in case of Mirabilis jalapa. Right. So now what we'll do is, let us take up a simple expression, right, and see how exactly the process of inheritance is happening. Right. So let us see what different types of male gametes, different types of female gametes. So when they undergo a process of fertilization or cross, so let us see what sort of offsprings do they produce. Right. So let us take up with this first. So this is the first one what we'll be taking up, the first circle, right? So a simple expression way how we actually demonstrate the plastid inheritance in Mirabilis jalapa. So this inner circle, we start dividing it into three parts, right? We start dividing it into three parts. So this represents our female gamete. right? So this represents the female gamete. So when we say female gametes, as we have said, there are three different types of branches or three different types of leaves. So let us put that here. So the female gamete having green colored branches, the female gamete having pale green branches, and the female gamete having variegated branches, right? So these three indicates the female gametes, right? So G represents the female gamete from green colored branch. P represents the female gamete from pale green colored branch, whereas V represents the female gamete from variegated branch. So when we say female gamete from green branch, what type of plastids do they have? They have chloroplast. When we say female gamete of pale green branch, what type of plastids do they have? They have leucoplast. When we say female gamete of variegated branch, so what type of plastids do they have? They have all three different types of plastids: the chloroplast, the leucoplast, as well as the chromoplast. So this three, the inner circle, would represent the female gamete. Now let's draw another circle here. So this circle would start representing the male gametes, right? So this circle would start representing the male gamete. Right? So this would be the male gamete. Right? Again, let's talk about the male gamete again. Right? So this one here. So we have three different types of gametes here again, male gametes. Right? So when a green colored male gamete fuses with the green colored female gamete, so what would be the progeny? That is what we are talking about. Second one, pale green male gamete fusing with the green female gamete. The third one, variegated male gamete fusing with the with the green female gamete. So this is what we are actually going to take. Similarly, with the second case also. So when a green colored male gamete fuses with the pale green female gamete, second condition, pale green female gamete fusing with the pale green male gamete. Third one, variegated male gamete fusing with the variegated male gamete fusing with the pale green female gamete. So this is the third condition what we have. Similarly here also, even in this place also, with regards to variegated, we have again three different types here. Right? So one will be green, this will be pale and variegated. So a green one fusing with the variegated branch, pale green fusing with the variegated branch fusing with the variegated branch. So what offsprings do we get? So for observing the offspring, so let us take up the third circle here. So this outer circle or the third circle would start indicating what would be the possible offsprings between the cross of the male gamete as well as the female gamete. Right? So this is what we have. So here it would be one set here, right? And here it would be the other set here, and here would be the third, right? So what sort of gametes will be getting? So let us take up with the first one here. When a green colored male gamete, green branched male gamete fuses with the green branched female gamete, what would be the offspring? The offspring would obviously be green. Why it would be green? I told you that it is maternal inheritance. Whatever type of plastid is present in the female gamete, the same type of plastid will be present even in the offspring also. So here in the first case, when a green colored male gamete fuses with a green colored female gamete, right? So what's happening here? Green colored male gamete fusing with the green colored female gamete. So the offspring obtained would be definitely green. The offspring will start inheriting the plastid called chloroplast, which was actually present in the female gamete. What about the second case? When a pale green male gamete fuses with the green female gamete, the offspring again here would be definitely green again. Because why again it will be green here? Because it is again, we are talking about maternal inheritance. I told you that whatever plastid is seen in the mother, the same plastid will be seen even in the progeny also. So no matter what the male gamete has, or no matter which type the male gamete is, right? So based on the type of female gamete, the offspring is being determined, right? Third condition now, variegated male gamete fertilizing with the green female gamete. So here again, the condition of the offspring will be having green colored branch. So they will be inheriting the plastid called as chloroplast. Clear with this so far? Right? So what we are trying to say, we are seeing how exactly these plastids are actually being inherited from one generation to the other generation. For that, we have taken up a simple expression here. So we have shown all the three possible female gametes in the inner circle. In the outer circle, we are showing about the male gametes, all possible male gametes. And in the outermost circle, we are actually showing about the different types of progeny which are actually obtained. Right. In the first case, what did we see? A green colored male gamete when it fertilizes an egg with green colored or chloroplast. Right. So the offspring that is obtained will have green branches. Second condition, a pale green male gamete fertilizing a female gamete. The offspring obtained again will have green branches. The third condition, variegated male gamete fusing with the green colored female gamete. Again, the offspring would be green only. So why are all the offspring said to be green in the first case? It is because the mother has this particular plastid called chloroplast, and mother is the one which contributes the cytoplasm. Since chloroplast is present in the cytoplasm, the same chloroplast present in the cytoplasm of the female gamete is seen transferred into the offsprings. So this type of inheritance, we start calling it as cytoplasmic inheritance, or we also call it as maternal inheritance. Let us complete this particular thing now here. So talking about the second condition, green colored female now fertilizing a egg with pale green branches. So what would be the condition here now? Definitely they would be inheriting a plastid called leucoplast, because we know that pale green branches or leaves, they have the plastid called as leucoplast, right? So mother contributing leucoplast to the offspring, so therefore the offspring also will be pale green. Second condition here, pale green male gamete, pale green female gamete, offspring will obviously be pale green here. Third condition, variegated male gamete, pale green female gamete, again the offspring here would be pale green here. So as I've already said, as we have already seen, even in the first case, even in the second case also, whichever plastid is present in the mother or the female gamete, the same plastid would be inherited even to the offspring also. Talking about the third condition. In the third condition, as I've said, right, so it is variegated branches. Since it is variegated, I told you that there are all three different types of chloroplast present. So let us see the conditions now. When a green branched male gamete or green colored male gamete fuses with a variegated one, what would be the offspring? Three types of offsprings would be produced here, right? So the offspring would be either green branch or pale green branch or variegated branch, right? So try to understand this. So whenever we talk about a cross between a male gamete and a variegated female gamete, it could be any of the male gamete, but when it is crossed with a variegated female gamete, since variegated females have all three different types of chloroplast, all three different types of plastids in their cytoplasm, so there are possibilities that all three would be inherited together. Now here we are telling that the offspring could be either green or pale green or variegated. So why green here again? See, what exactly happens is, if all three plastids are present, try to understand this, if all the three plastids are present, whichever plastid goes in maximum quantity, right, whichever plastid goes in maximum concentration, that type of color would be actually expressed. So if you see in the first case, we are telling that the offspring is green. So what does that mean? From the variegated mother, from the cytoplasm of the female gamete, the type of chloroplast which has gone more is said to be chloroplast in this case. In the second case, the type of plastid entering into the zygote is said to be more. That is, leucoplast is said to be more in the second case. In the third case, if all the three types of plastids are equally distributed, if they equally go into the zygote, then this would be the case here, variegated. So in case of green here, what does this mean? Maximum amount of plastids going into the zygote is the chloroplast. That's the reason why it is green here. Second case, pale green. Why it is pale green? Because the maximum amount of plastids getting into the zygote is said to be leucoplast here. And the third condition again, all three different types of plastids, that is leucoplast, the chloroplast, leucoplast, and chromoplast, all three are getting in equal concentration or equal proportions. So therefore, a variegated leaf is seen. Same with the next one also. So what happens in this condition here again? When a pale green male plant is crossed with a variegated female plant, right? So pale green male plant crossed with or fertilizing a variegated female plant. What would be the possible conditions here again? Three different offsprings would be possible. One would be green, the other one would be pale green, and the other one would be variegated. In the third condition also, the same thing. Variegated male fertilizing a variegated female. Again, here also, three different possibilities will be seen. So, offspring would be either green or pale green, or it would be variegated. So, this is what we have with the cytoplasmic inheritance, or rather plastid inheritance in case of Mirabilis ceramon. So, things what you need to remember here is whatever type of plastid is actually present in the mother, that is the female gamete, so the same type of plastid will actually be inherited into the male gamete. So in the first case, we saw that the female gamete is said to be green. So whatever be the type of male gametes fertilizing this green female gametes, the progeny will obviously be green. Second example, second condition what we saw is female is pale green. That is the female will start producing only leukocytes. Since the female is producing only leukocyte, whichever type of male gamete fuses with the pale green female gamete, the offsprings obtained will be only pale green here. In the third condition, variegated. Now, when we say variegated, there are three different types of plastids that are present. That is chloroplast, leucoplast, and chromoplast. So, when they fertilize, any of the male gamete fertilizes with this variegated female gamete. So, there are three different possibilities seen. Either the offspring would have green leaves or pale green leaves or variegated leaves. Now, why is this type of condition seen here? Because since all three plastids are present, so whichever goes in maximum concentration, that type of plastid will be expressed and that type of branches or leaves would be seen in the offspring. So if all three go in similar proportions or equal proportions, the offspring would be again variegated. So this is the type of inheritance, what we call it as maternal inheritance, or what we call it as cytoplasmic inheritance, which is actually shown in a plant called as Mirabilis jalapa. I hope you are clear with this particular thing here, right? Only thing what you need to remember in maternal inheritance or cytoplasmic inheritance is whatever character is present in the cytoplasm of the mother, the same character would be seen in the offspring also. Why only mother? Because it is the mother who is contributing the cytoplasm to the zygote. So therefore, whatever characters are present in the cytoplasm would be present even in the offsprings also. So this is the first example what we have with regards to plastid inheritance in case of Mirabilis jalapa, right? So now let's take up with the second example, right? What we'll be taking up, as I've already said, we'll take up one example with regards to the plants and the other example with regards to the animals. So we have done with the example pertaining to the plants. So let's take up another example now, right? Example pertaining to animals. So the second example what we'll be talking about is in an animal which is called as snail. I think all are familiar with snails, right? So snails are actually shelled organisms, right? So they are actually present within the shell. So this organism has a thick outer covering, which we actually call it as shell. So what we're going to take up here in plastid inheritance is the type of coiling that is seen in the shell, right? So the second example, what we have would be shell coiling in snails. So this is the second example what we'll be taking, right? Shell coiling in snails with regards to the cytoplasmic inheritance or the maternal inheritance, right? Now, when we look at the shell of the snails, right? So when we observe the coiling pattern in the snails, right? So we usually observe two types of coiling patterns. First type, we start calling it as dextral coiling. First one is called dextral coiling. So this is the first type of coiling what we are taking up. It is called as the dextral coil. So what is this dextral coil? Dextral coiling is also called right-handed coiling, right? It is called right-handed coiling, or it is also called as clockwise coiling. clockwise coiling. So what does this mean, right-handed coiling or clockwise coiling? So when you look at this snail or the shell of the snail from the top, right? So the coiling starts moving towards the right hand, that is towards the clockwise. If that is the case, we start calling it as dextral coiling, right? This is the first type. The second type would be termed as sinistral coiling. Second one is called sinistral coiling. Now this sinistral coiling is actually the left-handed coiling. It is called as the left-handed coiling, or we also call it as anti-clockwise coiling. Anti-clockwise coiling, right? So it is either left-handed coiling or anti-clockwise coiling. So what does this mean now? Again, when we look up to the animal or this particular shell of the snail from the top, the coiling will be towards the left-hand side, that is anti-clockwise direction. So if the coiling is clockwise direction, dominant trait, dextral coiling is a dominant trait, whereas okay, so we were actually talking about this types of coiling in case of this snails. So we said that there are two different types of coiling. One is called the dextral coiling and the other one is called the sinistral coiling. Dextral coiling is a dominant trait, right? Characterized by either capital D, homozygous dominant, or capital D, small d, heterozygous dominant. Whereas sinistral coiling is a recessive trait, small d and small d. Right. Now, if this is the condition, then if there is a dominant alleles being present, then it would be a dextral coiling, that is right hand coiling. If there is a recessive alleles being present, then it would be a sinistral coiling. So let us first exactly take up with the female organisms here. So when we take about the female organism, so let us take up capital D, a female having capital D, Right. Now this female, once it starts forming the gamete here, so this will be the female gamete. As usual, this is the egg here, right? So this is the female gamete. So this female gamete, as usual, will start providing the nucleus, right? Along with nucleus, since there are two dominant alleles, so these dominant alleles will start producing a protein, right? So that protein would actually be present in the cytoplasm, right? So this protein is actually responsible, right, for the coiling pattern in case of snails. So this is with regards to the female gamete of having alleles capital D and capital D. Now in the female gamete having small d and small d, what would be the condition here? Now when this starts forming the gamete, the nucleus is provided as such. Since both the alleles are recessive, the protein will not be formed here. Now since the protein is not formed here, right, so this would be termed as sinistral and this would be termed as dextral. Now this protein is the one which is actually transferred into the male gamete, right? It is the one which is actually, sorry, it is the one which is transferred into the zygote, as a result of which the zygote would actually show right-handed coiling. If this particular egg fuses with the male gamete, right? So let's consider this fusing with a male gamete with small d. So when these two fuse together, so this would be the male gamete here. When these two fuse together, what would be the condition here? the female is produced here. I mean, the zygote is produced, nuclei of both, and along with that, this is also inherited. Protein is also being inherited. So this offspring here, the zygote here, will now be showing dextral coil. Whereas when in the second case, when this fertilizes with another small d here, since there are no proteins formed here, this zygote will have only the nucleus, and this type of pattern, coiling pattern here, would be termed as sinistral coiling. Right. So let us take up a couple of crosses and see how exactly this coiling pattern is inherited from the parents to the offspring. Right. So let us take up a few crosses here. So in the first cross, let us take up the pure lines here. Right. So let's take up with the females here. Right. So the female is dextral. So when a dextral female, or rather we'll take up a male, a dextral male having the genotype capital D, right, is crossed with a sinistral female, having small d and small d. So what would be the condition now? So this male will start producing the gamete with capital D. This female also will start producing a gamete with small d. Right. Now when these two fuse together in the zygote, they would be having capital D and small d. So capital D coming from the male side, small d coming from the female side. Right. Now what would be the coiling pattern in this zygote? The coiling pattern in this zygote would be sinistral. So you can ask me how exactly sinistral, because capital D is present. Right. So what exactly we are talking about is the inheritance from the mother. So the cytoplasm of the female gamete does not have the protein. Since the protein is not present in the cytoplasm of the female gamete, the proteins are not inherited into the zygote. Since the proteins are not inherited into the zygote, the type of coiling here would be sinistral coiling, that is left-handed coiling. Right. So this is what we have. So let us take up the Punnett square and see how exactly it is happening. Right. So let us take up the Punnett square and see how exactly the inheritance pattern is happening. So we'll go a few generations down. So we have said that we have the male capital D, that is dextral male, crossed with the female small d and small d, the sinistral female. So in the F1 generation, what was the type of gametes, or what was the type of progeny obtained in the F1 generation? So this would be capital D here. Here it would be small d and small d here. This is what we have. Right. Now this small d is the egg from the female. Now since it is the egg from the female, since it is recessive condition, there are no proteins being formed here. So the offsprings here would be capital D small d again. So all four will be capital D small d, right? And all four would be showing which type of coiling pattern here? It would be sinistral type of coiling pattern. So all four will be showing sinistral type of coiling pattern, that is left-handed coiling. Why left-handed coiling again in the F1 generation? Why there is a left-hand coiling again? Because the mother did not produce any protein. Why the mother did not produce any protein? Because again, the mother has a recessive traits here, recessive alleles here. Since the recessive alleles are present, proteins are not being produced. Since the proteins are not being produced, what would be the type of coiling in the offspring? Everyone would show sinistral coil, that is left-hand coil. Right. So what can we interfere from this is, what can we infer from this is the sex of the individual, or not the sex, it is the type of coiling of the F1 progeny is already determined by the mother. So if the mother has protein, the type of coiling here would be dextral. If the mother does not have protein, the type of coiling here would be sinistral. So the type of coiling in the progeny is already predetermined by the mother. So that's the reason why we call the type of shell coiling in snails as predetermination or predetermined type of coiling. Why it is predetermined type of coiling? Whatever the type, whatever be the sex, or what, rather, we can put it this way. Whatever be the type of coiling in the mother is not dependent in the progeny. What is dependent? Presence of a protein. So if a protein is present in the mother, the offspring will show dextral type of coiling. If the protein is not present, it will show sinistral type of coiling. So this is the F1 generation. Now let us intercross the F1 generation so that we get a F2 generation. So let us take up with this. So a dextral male. So we are intercrossing F1 generation to get F2 generation. So a dextral male, capital D, small d, when crossed with a dextral female, sorry, this is not dextral, this is sinistral. So a sinistral male, when crossed with a sinistral female having genotype this one. So what would be the condition now? So this male will start producing two different types of gametes, capital D, small d, whereas this also will start producing two different types of gametes. Now try to understand this very clearly, right? So this particular F1 progeny, even though the coiling is sinistral here, now since they have a dominant allele present, will this sinistral type coiled female, will it produce the protein in its lifetime? So will it be able to produce a protein in its lifetime? So the answer will be definitely yes. Why it is yes? Because there is a dominant allele, right? So don't get confused here, right? A sinistral female, even though the coiling was sinistral, but during her lifetime, this female will start producing the protein. Now, since this female produces the protein, the same protein will be passed on into the offspring. So let us see with that. So when we start making the Punnett square again, right? So this would be the male here, capital D, small d, and this will be the female here, capital D and small d. So now this female has produced the proteins in the cytoplasm, right? So this female has produced the proteins in the cytoplasm. Now when they undergo the process of crossing, what would be the condition here? Capital D, and in their cytoplasm they will be having this particular protein. Capital D, small d again, and even in their cytoplasm also they will be having the protein. Third one, capital D, small d again here, and even in their cytoplasm also they'll be having the protein. And the last one, small d, and even in their cytoplasm also they'll be having the protein. So what would be the type of coiling in the F2 progeny? What would be the type of coiling in the F2 progeny? All of the F2 progeny individuals will show dextral coiling. They will show dextral coiling. Why do they show dextral coiling? Because the mother had a dominant allele. Now, since a mother had a dominant allele, the mother started producing the proteins, and that proteins which were present in the cytoplasm of the mother was transferred into the offspring. That's the reason why even in the last condition also, when both the alleles were recessive, right? When both the alleles were recessive, even though it showed a dextral coiling. So this is what we have. Right. Now let us take up one more cross. So let's go into the next generation, that is F3 generation. Right. So we'll see what happens in the F3 generation here. Right. In the F3 generation, let us take up this to be the female here. Right. And this is the male here. So in the F3 generation, when a dextral male having a genotype capital D is again crossed with a dextral female, right, having a genotype small d and small d, right? Now this again will produce gametes, this also will be produced gametes. Now when we talk about the female here again, right, female is dextral, but the genotype is small d and small d. Now will this female produce the protein? No. So this female will not produce the protein. Why the female will not produce the protein again? Because both are recessive alleles. Now since both are recessive alleles, this female will not produce the protein. Now let us see what would be the offsprings in this particular condition here. Right? So this will be male here again, capital D, and the female small d, no proteins, female small d, no protein. So when we start making the cross, capital D, small d, capital D, small d, capital D, small d, capital D, and small d. So all of them will not have any proteins in the cytoplasm. Since they do not have any proteins in the cytoplasm, the type of coiling here would be again sinistral coiling. It is the sinistral coiling. So what we can understand from this is, so this would be the F3 generation. So what we can understand from this is, in case of snails, so if coiling has to take place in case of snail, the coiling pattern is actually completely dependent on the proteins which are actually synthesized by the mother. So when is the protein synthesized by the mother? Whenever there is a dominant allele present, either there should be one dominant or both dominant. So if there is a dominant allele being present, only then the protein will be synthesized. And once the protein is synthesized, that protein will now determine the coiling pattern in case of the offspring. So in the first case, if we see, sinistral female was present, so the protein was not produced. So all of the offsprings were said to be sinistral. In the F2 generation, if we see, sinistral female is present, right? So F2 female parent is sinistral. But since there is a dominant allele present here, right, protein is being synthesized, and that protein from the cytoplasm is passed on into the offspring. So therefore, all the offsprings in the F2 generation would show dextral type of coil, even though the genotype is small d and small. In the third condition, the dextral female is showing dextral type of coiling. But since both the alleles are recessive, this female individual will not produce gametes. This individual will not produce proteins during its lifetime. So therefore, all the F3 progeny will show sinistral type of coil, right? So this is what we start calling as cytoplasmic inheritance. So whatever character is present in the cytoplasm of the female individual, that character would be transferred into the offspring. So we start calling it as either cytoplasmic inheritance or maternal inheritance, right? So with this, we'll be done with a small topic called maternal inheritance or cytoplasmic inheritance. In the later sessions, we'll take up with a few more topics in detail. Fine. Thank you.